My name is Vinny, and this is Katrina. And we're going to show you some pictures of our kiddos. And then we also want to share a little bit about our journey. We all have a story to tell, right? And is it not on?
It's hanging low. Maybe just use the handheld.
Can you hear me?
Oh, that works. Oh. Yeah.
We all have a story to tell, and there's no exception with our family. And I'm gonna pick up a little bit on our journey with foster care. These are our kids. You probably all know them already. You can hear them sometimes during service because they get very excited when they play. Isaac and Abby. They were adopted. We adopted them in June of this year. They were with us since they left the hospital in 2016, and it's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey. So I'm going to try and get through some of the story without crying, because there's a lot of things that God has done to tell us. Abby loves to smile. She has the most beautiful smile, and with all that she has to struggle through, her spirit is beautiful.
Yes.
Right? And I believe that that's part of what God has done in her life. Mm-hmm. And so, go ahead and go to the next picture, please. Isaac is her protector. He's only 2 or 3 minutes older than her, but he is her big brother.
Yeah.
When she can't find her cup of milk, he goes out and he finds it for her, and he brings it to her, right? When she's struggling to get on the couch, he tries to pick her up and put her on the couch. I think there it goes. All right. So he is definitely her protector and her caretaker, and he has learned to be a part of the mission that we are a part of, even with his own little sister.
Right.
Next one. These are some of their siblings. You might remember Charlie. Charlie was with us for a few months. This day we went out to take pictures shortly before the adoption. These are the 3 on the left here are the siblings for Isaac and Abby, and they were also adopted on the same day. There were 3 more siblings who did not make it out because of car troubles that day, but a total of 8 children that got adopted, all from the same family. They got adopted by 3 different homes, and that was a great, beautiful day. I won't say an ending to a story, but I will say the next chapter, right? The next chapter to a story that God is making. Right? And so I want to tell you a little bit of how we got there. That's the end of this chapter, right? But I want to tell you a little bit of rewind and take it back to the beginning. Back in 2015, Katrina and I got married in 2014. And in 2015, we began praying because we wanted to have our children. I'm 40, I was 40 at the time. And I didn't want to get too old. I didn't want to be a grandpa at graduation. And so we were praying, and wasn't happening. And so we got the doctors involved. And the doctor gave us the news that we cannot naturally have our own children. That was really hard on me because the problem was with me, you know. And I went through a struggle at first with blaming myself. I went through anger and frustration because so many other people have kids. And, you know, my mentality back then was so many people have kids, they don't take care of them. And here I want kids and I can't have them. And so I had to struggle through that. I remember Mother's Day that year, which was just about a month after we were given the news. And they're celebrating at church, mothers. And I'm sitting, I like to sit in the front because I get distracted really easily. I'm sitting there in the front and I'm basically crying because I'm saying, my thought process is, Katrina will not be a mom. And it was at that moment when an elderly lady came up to me. She has no idea what's going on. But she comes up to me, her name is Geraldine. And she comes up to me and she says, whispers in my ear, says, God says next year you'll have twins. Now, somebody laughed, I laughed. Right? Because she didn't know my situation. Whenever somebody says, God says, I'm sometimes a little skeptical.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no history of twins in our family. Because I'm still thinking one path only. So I'm like, that's impossible. I didn't tell her this. I said thank you for your word. And on my way home, I mentioned it to Katrina. And I never thought of it again. I never thought of it again. We continue going through the process. The doctors give lots of options. We decided not to go down those routes. And the time went by, and we're just hopeful for a miracle at this point. That's all we're waiting for, a miracle, God's miracle. Fast forward to January of 2016. We were planning to take a trip to New York because my brother was renewing his vows. He's in the military, and he got married really quick before he left. And so he didn't have a formal wedding. And so they were doing a formal wedding, and they were renewing the vows, and we were planning to go. And my sister calls me. My sister calls me that morning. And she says, I had a dream that you came to the house with 2 babies. Right? And what I haven't told you is, we had decided to do foster care by that time. I think we talked about it in June, somewhere around there, of 2015. And there were points of hesitation. I had never, ever considered foster care. I was afraid of the adoption process because I wasn't sure of the interaction. I was afraid that the kid would grow up and want to go back to his parents. There was so many fears blocking me that I'd never even considered the possibility of foster care. But in June, I approached Katrina because I felt like this was what we needed to do. Despite my hesitations in the past, despite my fears, I felt like God was calling us to foster care. And just like me, when I first told her about it, there was fear and hesitation. Not in the part of following God, but in our own emotions, right? And so we talked about it, and she was, we left her to process that. I was ready to go, and you know, it's not that she didn't want to, she was just, she needed to process. And so one August day, the time went by fast. Time moves really, really fast. One August day, I come home from work, and Katrina's like, I signed this up for foster care classes. And I'm like, great. So
They start in 2 days.
Yeah. We did it at People's Church uptown, and we started the foster care training process, which is several weeks long. And we decided that we're going to beat all the statistics that say it takes 6 months. We said, we're going to get it done in 3 months, because the training takes 3 months. We'll get all the paperwork done, and then we're going to just kind of force them to get it done faster. That didn't happen. We learned a lot of things. One is we learned the reality of the foster care system. It's overwhelmed in our area. We saw the video of Brown County in Texas, but in our area, the system is overwhelmed. There are not enough social workers. There are not enough families. And so it took the entire process that they told us. Even though we got the process done, we got all our paperwork in, and you have to go through a bunch of hoops to get foster care certified. But we were waiting. When my sister called in January, we were getting frustrated at that point. So my sister says, I had a dream that you came to the house with 2 babies. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's possible. Because, again, I wasn't thinking along the lines of what God can do. I was like, we signed up and to take up to 2 kids, right? So that's totally a possibility. I didn't give it much thought. I don't even remember if I mentioned it to Katrina right away. But we went about our time. And I'm going to let Katrina tell a little bit more about the story from there.
And when we originally signed up to do the classes and things, something that Vinny had said to me that really breached something in my heart was, while we're waiting for our own miracle, we can love somebody else's kids. They need it, so we can love them. And that really started to break down those barriers in my heart, like normal fears, like things that people would normally say to us, like we've heard say to us is, you know, I can't do it, it would hurt too much to give them back, this and that, you know, things you think, but, you know, maybe shouldn't always say. They come out naturally because we're humans, right? Well, we hit January with that phone call, and then we're still not approved for foster care. And here we come into February, and we haven't heard anything from our agency. I'm really frustrated. Vinny's trying to calm me down, because I'm like, do we even go with the right agency? What's going on? Maybe we didn't get approved, you know? And on February 15th, we got a phone call from Hannah Schrader. Some of you know her from, the Schraders discipled me, and so that's how we got interconnected. But she calls me and said, Katrina, I was praying for you this weekend, and God told me to call you today and tell you your prayers have been answered. And that was on Monday morning. And I, you know, at the time, I was thinking, well, that's great. I've got like 15 prayers in the hopper. You know, which one won? I hope it's the one I want. You know. And so, you know, and then time passes, and you know, I don't see any fruit from that phone call. And then on March 7th, I get a phone call, and it's from our agency, and the lady who did our homestay, she goes, Katrina, congratulations. you're licensed to foster and adopt, and we have a referral for you if you want to hear it. And I'm like, okay, go for it. And she said, well, we have 3-week-old preemie twins who need a home today. I was like, let me call Vinny. And I called him, and he's like, I'm on my way. And then the same day, the way that it works is kind of a series of phone calls in the same day until it's finished, and then you go. You either go pick up the children or they get dropped off at your house. And so the second phone call was, it's a girl and a boy. Okay. And the third phone call was a phone call that still bothers me today. But it was, I could tell on the other line that the caseworker was African American. And she said, are you sure you want to take them because they're African American? And it bothers me because I know that they had to make that phone call because something didn't go right in the past, you know? I said, of course, you know, we love people, like, of course, you don't even have to ask. The fourth phone call came and said, okay, now it's a little different because we found out that the little girl has a brain bleed. They said, we don't know what that means, but that's what's going on. We know nothing else about these kids, and you have to decide right now if you're going to take them. And so this is another good example of you better be prayed up, because you don't have time to pray about it, right? And so we said, you know, yes, of course, because we knew from the steady follow-up from the Lord over the last 6 months that this is supposed to happen. This is us. This is our story. So Vinny came home. We went to the hospital. We went into the NICU, and they were so kind to us. And we went in and sat down. We were holding the babies. This is baby Abby. That's Isaac, and a very proud daddy. And we, while we were in there holding the babies, the social worker from the NICU comes in, and because they were going to release, at the time his name was Christian, to us that day, but Abby needed to stay in the NICU longer because she had a lot of medical issues that we later kind of unraveled. Look how tiny. So he was 4.5 pounds when we brought him home. And then you can go ahead and we'll just click through these pictures. And this is Abby and Daddy.
You can tell who put the slides together.
Yeah.
Daddy. That's the first time that they were back together again after they were born.
So, you know, when Katrina called me and said they have a placement for us and we're approved, and she told me they were twins, everything connected at that point, right? Everything connected at that point. I remember clearly, the processing in my mind of Geraldine coming to me. My sister called me, and I knew at that moment that this was something that God was planning. God was doing something here, right? And you know, when we decided to do foster care, we decided that if we take a placement, we're going to be 100% committed to that, to whoever it is, even if they have to go back. And we put, when you do foster care paperwork, there's all kinds of check marks that you have to put in what you would accept in your home and so on and so forth. And we put all that in there. We weren't very restrictive on the things that we had on our list. And so it was a yes for us right away, even though we didn't know what we were stepping into.
Then when we're in the NICU, the social worker for the NICU comes into us and is talking to us about releasing Isaac home to us, and so she was kind of clarifying that Abby would be staying in the hospital, probably for a few more weeks, but Abby would not be going home with us because she needed to be in a medical treatment home, and we were new foster parents and should not have her. And so we started praying immediately, because twins should not be separated, siblings should not be separated if all possible, you know, but these are our twins and they should not be separated. And so we purposed in our heart to make some very fast adjustments. And so Vinny stayed home and worked from home during the day for the next 2 weeks. And we tag teamed back and forth at the hospital so that she was basically only alone during a car ride. And through that time, that social worker saw us going in, saw us learning how to feed her, because we just picked her up like she was going home with us. They told us that she was a failure to thrive and that she wouldn't probably make it. We just chose to not always believe what people say.
Right. Come on.
You don't have to believe what everybody says.
Yeah.
And so 3 days later, she was only eating at 33% the day that we got there, and it was declining. And from the point that we got there and started praying over her and being with her and somebody fighting for her, she started to increase. And so after 3 days, she was eating at 97%, and they took the feeding tube out.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, they told us she would be going home with oxygen on the 5th week. And we were fine. We're like, well, we're on oxygen. We'll figure it out. And the day she went home, she got checked off the oxygen box, so we went home without oxygen. And she was doing so good. 2 weeks later, so we get them both home. As soon as we got them home in the bassinet together, Isaac wiggled until he got his arm out and touched her. And you could just, that protective spirit is over his heart. We're all trying not to cry through this, I just need to know that. 2 weeks later, she wasn't moving right, as a newborn should be moving. And so I drove her downtown to the emergency room, and they rechecked us into the NICU. They ran a bunch of tests on her and rechecked us into the NICU. And as foster parents, you know, we're entitled to nothing. We learn a lot about entitlement when you have no say in anything and expectations on everything. We have to take care of everything. We've got to do everything. We get to make no choices. We can't even select haircuts. Like that, everything about entitlement in our lives is stripped away. And so, you know, we're in the emergency room and people are talking around us because they think that we already know what's going on, and we don't know what's going on. And eventually we got put into a room, and I found her file that was left in the room, and I picked it up and read that thing and learned that she had a stroke in utero and only had 1/3 of her cerebellum. And she had so many other things lined up that people were confused on what was going to happen. And again, we just chose not to believe everything we see. Just because we see it that way doesn't mean that that's the truth. Miracles happen every day.
Amen.
So, you know, as we're progressing through this journey, you know, we're 2 months, we have 2-month-olds. You know, eventually we go home, we have 2-month-olds, and we're told that Abby's blind. And if you've seen her today, you know she's not blind, because we didn't believe everything people told us, and we prayed and we believed. Abby is a genuine example of healing that happens continually. Even every day as she grows, she's continuing to heal on a daily basis through every part of her journey. And it's because people are fighting for her. You know, she can't pray for herself right now. She can't do it herself. But something that they say about foster care is, you know, it turns mama bears into grizzly bears. And it's so true. I walked into the NICU at one point, and She was in her bassinet and somehow got missed on the rotation, and so her bed was wet, and she was completely soaked through and not taken care of, and I flipped my lid and drug every doctor in that hospital into that room, and it was that defined point that I stopped being her paper foster mom, and I was her mommy. Because touch my baby, I hurt you. That's how it works. And so, but you know, we progress through, and you know, every time we're supposed to hit a developmental milestone and it doesn't quite come right away, we get sent to a new department at Children's, and it's just kind of a steamroll of things that happen over time. But you know, diseases that are like something called neutropenia, where she caught every disease possible because her blood didn't produce the right antibodies to fight infections. And she's been excused from hematology because the Lord healed her from that. Amen. You know, like we've dropped several departments over time.
Yeah, so we could obviously tell a lot of stories about what she has gone through and the things that God has done for her and the things He's taken us through, right? But before we end today, I just want to remind folks of what God's heart is for the orphan. In Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 18, it says, He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the alien, giving them food and clothing. God's heart and His plan is for you and I, we, the church, to defend the fatherless. We may be unaware of what's out there. We were unaware. We may be afraid. But as we care for the fatherless, we are showing God's love, and we are showing humility, and that is what represents the gospel. We may hesitate. There may be lots of uncertainty, but as followers of the King, when we care for the orphans, it shows that we are living a life of faith.
Yes.
Because there are so many things that we encountered that we never expected. And we can tell this story 100 different ways because there are so many things that we've learned along the way. We have to let go of our entitlement. We have to be committed. Luke chapter 9, verse 23 says, whoever follows me must take up their cross daily. And taking care of the orphan is part of that. There's things that we give up in order to care for Abby. And it's not to gloat or to puff ourselves up. But this commitment to care for the orphan requires sacrifice from the church. Once
it's not comfortable. There's nothing about it's comfortable. I, at one point, had to give up my job in missions that I had done for 12 years and loved, but this baby needs somebody to fight for them. And so you have to make a choice on whether or not you're going to fight for somebody for the kingdom, or you're going to be comfortable in your home.
Once we have this knowledge, we, the church, have a responsibility to care for the orphan. The video mentioned 500,000 children in foster care. Isaac and Abby are part of that number. Charlie, who was here, was part of that number. You all have held them. You have loved them. You have been a part of their story. And we need to continue to care and do more to care for the orphans. As we do that, as we stand against the injustice, right, and as we care for the poor, we will be frustrated because the systems don't work well. But there are many, many, many different things we can do. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 says, do not grow weary in doing good. Right? Because God will make something good of it. All right? And so there are many different ways we can participate in this, and Katrina's going to tell us about a couple of those.
You know, and you can always adopt. If you can't adopt, you could do foster care. If you can't do foster care, maybe you could do respite care and give foster parents a break for a weekend or a date night. If you can't do respite care, maybe you could come around a foster family and just make that family your family. I believe that there are people in this church already who maybe you've been teetering on the idea of foster care. And we're always willing to have that conversation with you, for better, for worse, for ups and downs, for partnership, because you're going to need a babysitter. So we need a babysitter.
Selfless plug.
But I had so many people sad because they didn't give me a baby shower. I'm just going to totally go down this road. A baby shower, but it's weird, right? Like, foster care is not really my baby, but you're going to, you know, it's always that back and forth not sureness of us, you know, as people, right? But really what foster families need is, as soon as they get a placement, the next 2 weeks of their life is like a tornado of medical appointments and court appointments and all of these appointments. And so the next 2 weeks, they need somebody to go make a diaper run, to pick up the right size clothes, to make sure that they have the right size sheets for the right bed, to provide meals at night so that the family can adjust to a whole new kid being in their house. And so those are the different kinds of practical ways that you can jump in and come around an existing foster family. I think those are good practical.
As you consider getting involved, right? As you consider what you can do, I will for sure say from experience that God will make you victorious, because what he asks us to do is not something that he hasn't done himself. All right? We have all been adopted into the family of God. That's right. So we were all orphans at one point. So as you consider what you're going to do to care for the orphan, remember that because God tells you to do it, he knows what you can and can't do, and he will take you through it.
Yes.
Okay? He will make you victorious. I could not have done it. We could not have done it without the help of God, without the help of the church, right? And Grandma has been a huge help. She's over here. Grandma has been a huge help, and she sacrifices a lot to come and help us weekly, all right? And so we're so thankful, and we know that it's not over, because there are still so many kids out there that need help, and we're going to be enlisting our name again. We got to get some beds ready, but we're going to be enlisting our name again so that we can continue to do that. And we invite you all along.